Hello, welcome back to Solo Adventures. My name is Livy and I'm here again with another game review. So as you probably already know, the BGG PnP Solitaire contest is going on right now. Please check out the entrants if you haven't already because there's a lot of great games that have been entered this year. Today, the game that I'm looking at is called Dolphins and Dinos, and this is a game that was created by designer Arthur Woolwill. So in this game, we take on the role of a museum director who is attempting to lay out a museum in such a way as to maximize the fun and excitement of the guests. The only problem is that we are under strict budgetary and time constraints. So how does this game play? Let's take a look. So first we're going to talk about how to set up this game. It's pretty easy. All you need to do is find the restaurant card and set that aside. And then you need to shuffle all of the exhibits. After the cards are shuffled, then we line them up in a row. So here we are all set up. So the object of this game is to design a museum that is as interesting as possible. So you can see on each of the cards here that they have a dollar value and a victory point value. So the cards with the higher victory points are more interesting exhibits. So for example, the seahorses are more interesting than the skeletons, and the snakes are more interesting than the frogs, for example. So the way that we have to lay out our museum is that we need to take the guests from the less interesting exhibits to the more interesting exhibits. And we need to do this under time pressure. So basically we're going to have points deducted based on how much time it takes for us to do this task. I'm going to do a quick playthrough without the timer first so I can explain my thought process, and then I'm going to do a playthrough with the timer to see if I can actually beat this game. So first things first, what we can do on our turn is we can either play a card, or we can discard a card, or we can play the restaurant card. Now our museum is going to be laid out by either with either 3x4 or 4x3, and we're going to lay out the cards in a grid. So I'm going to play Mr. Skeleton. The restaurant card can be put anywhere, but it's not worth any points. So here's the dolphin. 5 and 13 don't make a connection, so I'm kind of hoping that I can loop around this way to make a really long path. Then we have 14. That's good. Carnivorous dinosaurs, I guess. We can play any card to the left or right, or above or below, but we cannot play cards diagonally. So here's number 7. There was 6. I didn't think that through properly. And here I have all the time in the world, so I guess I'm just not great at this game. We'll put 6 here. 1 can go here. Then we have 8, 10, 9. Going to discard this one. I'm going going to play the restaurant card here so that we can make a link there. Put this one here, this one here, that one here, and this here. So this would be our completed museum. Now that we have this set up, we have to do a little bit of math. So we have to identify what the longest route is. I think it's 1, 5, 7, 8. 1, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12, I guess. 1, 5, 7, 8, 10, 12. So then we add up the points. This is 1 plus 5 plus 7 plus 8 plus 10 plus 12. That gives us a total of 43 victory points. And then we just need to subtract the cost, 23. So we just subtract our victory points from the cost. And I get 20. From this then I would subtract my time penalty. You win the game if you finish with a positive number. So 20 I guess is a good score right now, but I would not have done so well because I took such a long time earlier. So now let's try a round of this game for real. I'm gonna try not to crack under the pressure. So with this game we can pick different difficulties and they have different requirements. So since we're just starting out, we're going to play with just the basic rules. So I'm going to have to subtract 1 point for every 10 seconds of time that it takes. And there's going to be no requirements for features. But at the higher difficulty levels, you need to have, for example, at least one row or column in which all 3 cards share a feature. And features are these little pictures. So the manual says that this is water, this is life. It doesn't explain what this little bone is, but I'm gonna maybe say dead. So, for example, the dolphins are alive and they're in water. The dinosaurs are dead. The snakes are alive. And I suppose you can talk about all of these things in the auditorium, so it's all 3 of these things. Let's try a game of this for real. I will just get out my phone to use as a timer, as I think probably most people will. And go, if that's all set up. Where's the restaurant? Here it is. All right, get ready, get set, go. All right, so that took me 1 minute and 6 seconds. Let's figure out what the longest path is. So I've determined this to be my longest path. So now we add up our points. My time was 1 minute and 6 seconds. My total victory points are 55, and the cost was 29. So far I have 26 points, and we have to subtract the time penalty. So I took 1 minute and 6 seconds. I lose 1 point for every 10 seconds of game time. So that means I lose 6 points, and that gives me a total of 20. So I win. I think it's time for some final thoughts about this game. So what are my final thoughts on Dolphins and Dinos? Well, first let's talk about the builds. The build is extremely simple. It's just this tiny deck of cards, and they only come in black and white. There is no color version. And then you just need a timer. And probably everybody has a timer if they have access to a phone. I made these with my brand new laminator, which is really fantastic. But if you don't have access to a laminator, I guess you're just going to have to either find teeny tiny sleeves or be okay with the cards being just like normal paper or cardstock. So that's okay. The size was a little bit concerning to me at first when I first saw these cards, because I thought, wow, these are just so tiny. Why make the cards this little? But I soon warmed up to the idea when I realized that in order to play this game, you have to line them all up in a single row. So if the cards were bigger, I think they would take up way too much space on the table. The small size makes them a little bit trickier to shuffle, but other than that, I guess I wouldn't say that there's too many drawbacks for that. They do not have backs on them, however, which is just a very slight nitpick. It's not really super important for a game like this because you only have to really shuffle it once before you lay out all the cards face up. If the cards had a back that could match the artwork here, I would think that would be a really nice little touch. I also don't really see a reason why this game didn't have at least minimal color in it, because the little icons here, like the little bone or the little water droplet, the little palm tree, they could have easily been like blue or green or yellow or something like that. And it would have made it a little bit easier at first glance to tell the icons apart from each other. The artwork is extremely simplistic, but I'm okay with that. I sort of like the minimalist sort of look. I think the game would be a little cooler with a little bit more involved artwork, but it's perfectly fine and serves its purpose. I guess this is just a prototype after all. And the game could go through some changes before the end, even as we speak. So as for the gameplay, I found this game surprisingly enjoyable. I wasn't sure that I would like it so much at first because I really am somebody who kind of panics under pressure. I don't like time constraints most of the time, but I think it really fits pretty well with the theme. You're a museum director and you're attempting to solve the problem. You're attempting to design the museum under a tight deadline with a tight budget. It does make you feel like you have to hurry up and figure things out and try to make things as exciting for the guests as possible. So I did like that. The different difficulty levels are also really fun, and I like that there is a win or lose condition. You do win or lose depending on whether you have a positive or negative score at the end. So that's great. I know that it's still mostly kind of a beat your own score kind of game, but I really appreciate it when games like this still have a win or lose condition. I think this game would be really fun to play multiplayer, actually. There wasn't any rules written in the manual specifically, but I think that it would be really easy. You would just have to make 2 decks of these cards, and then when you shuffle them, you would just have to put them in order so that every player has the same order of cards, and then you would just compare scores at the end. Something that's a little perplexing to me, though, is how the scoring works, because every card has victory points and a cost on it. So, for example, this one is 8 victory points, but it costs 4. So in the end, with the difference of that, this card is just 4 victory points. I mean, I sort of understand from a thematic sort of way, you know, wanting to organize things from most to least exciting, but it would be kind of nice if the calculation was already done for you, or there was just some other way to represent this, because it's a little bit tedious having to do the math at the end. And this is probably my biggest criticism, is just how short and snappy this little game is, but it can take some time to actually kind of calculate and figure out your score and figure out what your time penalty is. So that's a little bit cumbersome. It's not that big of a deal, especially when you get used to it, but it is something to keep in mind with this game. I think that the restaurant card really adds a lot of fun and variability and strategy to this game, because you can use it anywhere, and you can use it to help connect 2 parts of your museum that otherwise wouldn't, but it is worth 0 points. So you mostly don't want to use it if you don't have to, but it's there if you want to make a really sweet combo. I also like that all of the cards are laid out in a row at the very beginning, so you can kind of predict what's coming in the future. You can spend some time, if you want some of that precious time, trying to figure out, okay, you know, here's the 14 value one, and I want to have that one, so, you know, what's the layout we could have? So all in all, this is a fun game. I think you should try it. But as I think you should probably try all of the games that have been entered in this year's contest, you shouldn't take my opinion for it. You should try it yourself and see what you think. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do here, please consider liking and subscribing. I also recently started up a new Facebook group where other solo adventurers like you can meet up to chat about every and any kind of solo gaming or game-like experience that you can imagine. So not just board games and not just print and play, but game books, solo RPGs, all that kind of fun stuff. So check out the link in the description below, and maybe it's something you'd be interested in. I just want to sincerely thank you for spending the time to watch this video, and take care of yourself.